I was cheated out of a promotion by my wife, so I resigned, exposed her mistake, and rose even higher. I walked into her office, my heartbeat steady, my steps deliberate, but my mind was a battlefield of clashing emotions. The air was thick with her signature perfume, a scent I once loved. It used to remind me of home. Now, it just reeked of power, control, and betrayal. It clashed with the sterile, corporate scent of the office, a place where I had poured years of my life, my effort, my soul. A place that never truly saw me. Or maybe it did, but never valued me the way it should have. Beyond the glass walls, the city skyline shimmered in the sunlight, casting reflections across the sleek, impersonal furniture. Her office radiated authority, cold, calculated authority. And right now, victory. I saw it in the way she sat behind her desk, fingers perfectly manicured and intertwined, as if she had just closed another high-stakes deal. But it was her smile that gave her away. It wasn't the usual composed, corporate grin. No, this one was smug, self-satisfied, cruel. She was expecting me. I let the silence hang between us as I quietly shut the door. My pulse remained calm, my expression blank. I had learned long ago how to master control even when everything inside me threatened to collapse. "Congratulations, Jamie," she said, her tone laced with mockery. "Your hard work paid off. I'm promoting my boyfriend, Stuart, instead of you. He's more of a team player." Her words hit like a blow to the chest, sinking hard and fast, but I showed nothing. I refused to give her the satisfaction. 5 years. 5 years of sacrifice. Of missed vacations, long hours, family events skipped. I gave everything to this job, to this business, to her. And now she sat there, smug and unrepentant, as if it had all been some twisted game. And Stuart. Of course it was Stuart. The guy who rose through the ranks without lifting a finger. Always around when things went well, always absent when they didn't. Stuart, who now had my promotion. I took a slow breath, the anger buried deep. She wanted a reaction. She'd get nothing. Without a word, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a crisp white envelope. It had waited patiently in my desk for weeks. Deep down, I had seen this coming. I walked forward, placed it gently on her stack of reports, and slid it toward her, deliberate, calm, final. "I understand," I said simply. "Here's my resignation." The change in her expression was subtle, but I caught at the slight furrow of her brow, the hesitation in her fingers as they reached for the envelope. She hadn't expected this. She thought she held all the cards, believed she was in control. She assumed I needed this job more than they needed me. She was wrong. I stood still, watching as she opened the envelope. Her nails tapped softly against the paper as she unfolded the contents. Her eyes scanned the first page quickly, then slower. Her lips parted, her posture stiffened, and that smug confidence began to waver. I said nothing, just waited, because what she found inside wasn't just a resignation letter. It was something else, something much more impactful. A detailed report outlining the groundbreaking project management system I'd been developing over the last 3 years. A system that boosted productivity, eliminated inefficiencies, and generated massive profits. A system she had dismissed without a second glance. A system I had quietly patented 6 months ago. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through the pages. I watched, almost amused, as realization set in. "Jamie," she said, her voice suddenly soft and uncertain. I tilted my head slightly, waiting. "Why didn't you tell us about this before?" I let out a low, humorless chuckle. "I did. 3 times. You dismissed it." Her face paled. She shuffled the documents, her mind clearly racing, trying to find a loophole, trying to claw back control. "It's patented?" she whispered. 6 months ago, I confirmed. She inhaled sharply. That was the moment, the crack in her armor. The precise instant she realized she'd made a critical mistake. For years she had overlooked me, dismissed my ideas, chosen politics over innovation. Now, she was finally facing the consequences. She straightened in her chair, voice carefully composed. "Jamie, let's be reasonable. We can match whatever offer you've received, maybe even exceed it." I laughed, truly laughed, for the first time in a long while. Then, for the first time in that entire conversation, I said her name. "Holly," I said evenly. This was never about money. She opened her mouth to respond, but I didn't let her. "It's about respect," I continued. "Something I never got here." Her lips tightened into a hard line. She knew I was right. I had spent years being overlooked, used, underestimated. And now, when she finally realized my worth, it was too late. I buttoned my jacket, adjusted my watch, and took a step back. "So, you and Stuart enjoy the promotion," I said smoothly, my tone final. "I'm sure you'll do great without me." Then I turned and walked out of her office. I didn't need to look back. I didn't need to see her reaction to know what was happening behind me. She was panicking, and for good reason. She thought she had won. She thought she'd get the last word. But what she never realized was that I'd been playing a different game altogether. And now, I was winning. I walked out of my wife's office with my head held high, my steps firm, my emotions tucked neatly behind a calm, composed exterior. Around me, the office buzzed with whispers. Eyes followed me from behind computer screens, from over cubicle walls, through the glass of conference rooms. My so-called colleagues were pretending to work, but it was obvious they were talking about what had just happened. They all assumed I'd be crushed, expected me to storm out in anger, demand answers, maybe even beg for a second chance. They thought I'd fall apart, because this job, this position had been my whole world. But they were wrong. What none of them knew, what not even Ava had realized, was that I had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. I walked through the office, past the break room where Stuart was probably basking in his shallow victory, past the HR desk where my resignation would soon become official, past rows of desks where coworkers shot me sympathetic glances while pretending to stay focused on their screens. Let them whisper. Let them think I lost. They had no idea what was coming. At my desk, I grabbed an empty box and started packing. My hands moved with calm precision as I collected a few framed photos, a couple of books, and the personal items I'd gathered over the years. There wasn't much, just enough to remind me that, once upon a time, I actually cared about this place. I had given everything to this company. My time, my energy, my loyalty, only to be tossed aside the moment it was convenient. That was their mistake. While they had been busy playing politics, I had been building something far more valuable. I glanced at the thick folder inside my bag, the blueprint for the project management system I had spent the last 3 years perfecting. A system designed to revolutionize workflows, streamline operations, and eliminate the very inefficiencies that plagued companies like Evermark. Ava had ignored it. Stuart probably didn't even know it existed. And now I owned it. I had patented it 6 months ago. While they were busy scheming and maneuvering, I had been refining every detail, testing, improving, perfecting. And the best part? I already had interested buyers lined up. I could have launched it under Evermark's name, handed it over, and transformed the industry in their image. But why would I do that? Why give them my masterpiece when they had made it clear I meant nothing to them? If they didn't want me, they didn't get the system either. I was taking it elsewhere. As I packed the last of my things, I heard footsteps approaching. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. Stuart. I could feel his smug energy radiating toward me before he even spoke. That same grating arrogance that made you want to roll your eyes, even in silence. No hard feelings, buddy, he said, his voice thick with fake sympathy. I didn't rush. I finished closing the box, checked everything one last time, then turned to him. He stood there, arms crossed, wearing that infuriating smirk, the kind that screamed entitlement. He looked like someone who believed he had earned something, when in reality, it had just been handed to him. I studied him for a moment, then smiled. Not forced, not bitter. A genuine, amused smile. Why would there be? I said, I'm sure you'll do great. Stuart blinked, clearly taken aback. He had expected me to be bitter, to lash out, to show some sign of being defeated. But I wasn't. I was free. Stuart shrugged, clearly brushing off any unease he felt. He probably thought I was just being a good sport, but he had no idea. As he walked away, I closed my laptop bag and picked up my box. This chapter of my life was over, but the next one was going to be legendary. That evening, I sat in my apartment, my laptop open, the soft glow of the screen reflecting off the whiskey glass in my hand. Emails were already pouring in, investors, industry leaders, people who had heard rumors about my system and were eager to get a piece of it. Then one email caught my attention and made my breath hitch for a moment. Noah Grant, CEO of Westbridge Industries. Westbridge wasn't just any corporation. They were one of the biggest names in the industry, with a global reach and unmatched influence. I clicked on the email. Jade, I heard you left Evermark. We need to talk. Coffee tomorrow? Short, direct, powerful. I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. Westbridge wasn't just a company, it was the kind of place that respected innovation, nurtured talent, and paid attention. And now they wanted to talk to me. I grabbed my phone and typed my response. See you at 9 o'clock. I set the phone down, exhaling slowly. A smirk tugged at my lips. Ava had spent years ignoring my ideas. Now, she was about to realize just how big a mistake that had been. She thought Stuart's promotion was her victory. She thought pushing me out had secured her future. She thought she had won. She had no idea. Tomorrow, I'd sit across from one of the most powerful CEOs in the industry. Tomorrow, I would begin the next chapter of my career, one where I was no longer just an employee. Tomorrow, I'd take the first step toward building something far bigger than Evermark had ever imagined. And Ava? She'd soon understand exactly what she had lost. I took a slow sip of my whiskey, feeling the warmth spread through my chest, then leaned back in my chair. While Evermark celebrated Stewart's promotion, I was about to change the game entirely. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early. Not because I was eager, but because I wanted to control the environment. I wanted to choose my seat, to observe, to settle into the space with confidence. This wasn't just a casual coffee meeting. This was a power move, and I intended to play it perfectly. I ordered a black coffee, no cream, no sugar. The bitterness matched my mood. The cafe was sleek and modern, filled with early morning professionals tapping away at laptops, having hushed business discussions, strategizing their next big deal, just another day in the corporate jungle. I chose a table near the window, giving me a clear view of the entrance. The moment Noah Grant walked in, I wanted to be the first thing he saw. He arrived exactly on time, not a minute early, not a minute late. That alone told me something about him. He was precise, methodical, a man who respected structure. Noah Grant was in his late 40s, tall, well-groomed, with an effortless confidence that only came from running an empire. Westbridge Industries wasn't just another company. It was a giant, a leader in tech innovation, project management, and global business solutions. And now, they wanted to talk to me. I stood as Noah approached, offering a firm handshake. His grip was solid, his eyes sharp and assessing. "Jade," he greeted. "Glad you could make it." "Of course," I replied smoothly. "I appreciate the invitation." We sat, and he didn't waste any time. "I won't sugarcoat this," he said, leaning forward slightly. "I know about your resignation. I know Evermark just handed a major promotion to a guy who, frankly, I wouldn't trust to manage a lemonade stand. And I know you've been sitting on something big." I took a sip of my coffee, letting his words settle. He was testing me, pushing for a reaction. I gave him nothing. "Go on," I said evenly. He smiled slightly, clearly appreciating my composure. "Oh, the system," he said. "I've heard whispers about it, a project management tool that optimizes efficiency, reduces redundancies, and streamlines operations at an industry-wide level. Evermark was blind to what they had, but I'm not. I want to know what it does. And more importantly, I want to know if you're willing to bring it to Westbridge." I let a slow smirk cross my face. "You've done your homework," I said. "It's my job," he replied simply. I leaned back in my chair, my fingers tapping against the coffee cup. "It's not just a tool," I said. "It's a game changer. Companies lose millions every year to inefficiency, bottlenecks, miscommunication, outdated processes. My system doesn't just track progress, it analyzes patterns, predicts obstacles, and adapts in real time. It turns workflow into something predictable, scalable, and foolproof." Noah's eyes flickered with interest. "And you patented it?" It wasn't a question, he already knew the answer. 6 months ago, I confirmed. "Which means Evermark has no rights to it. They ignored it. They ignored me. And now, they don't get to have it." Noah's smile widened slightly, the kind of smile that said he appreciated the vengeance in my tone. "I like the way you think," he said, "and I like what you've built. I want it." I took another sip of my coffee. "Well, that depends," I said smoothly. "What are you offering?" This was the moment everything shifted. I wasn't just a guy looking for a job. I wasn't another former employee trying to land on his feet. I was the asset here, and Noah Grant knew it. He reached into his briefcase and slid a folder across the table. "Take a look," he said. I opened it. Base salary triple what I was making at Evermark. Equity at 10% stake in Westbridge's next innovation sector. Title, Vice President of Strategic Development. Full creative control over my systems integration. I kept my face neutral, but inside, I was already calculating my next move. This was a kingmaker deal. It wasn't just a job. It was a seat at the table. I closed the folder and met his gaze. "I have 2 conditions," I said. He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "First," I continued, "I want full autonomy over how this system is implemented. No bureaucracy. No corporate red tape. I run it my way." Noah nodded. "Done." "Second," I smiled. "I want the press release to clearly state that Evermark had the opportunity to implement this system and chose to pass on it." Noah chuckled. "Oh, you really want to twist the knife, don't you?" "They underestimated me," I said, my tone cold. "I just want to make sure they realize exactly what they lost." Noah leaned back, considering me for a moment before extending his hand. "It's a deal. Welcome to Westbridge, Jade." I shook his hand, sealing the deal. This wasn't just a career move, it was payback. That evening, I walked into my apartment feeling lighter than I had in years. For so long, I had played by Evermark's rules, let Ava dictate my value, let a broken system decide what I was worth. But now, I was the one making the rules. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, a new email from Ava. I smirked, already knowing what it would say before I opened it. "Hey Jade, I think we may have made a mistake. Let's talk." I didn't reply. Instead, I drafted an email to Noah, looking forward to the press release. "Make sure Evermark's name is in bold. I set my phone down, poured myself a drink, and leaned back in my chair, gazing out at the city skyline. Ava thought she had beaten me. She thought she had secured her future. But soon, she'd realize how wrong she was. I wasn't just moving on, I was moving up. 2 weeks later, on my last official day at Evermark, I walked into the office for the final time. The atmosphere felt different. There was a palpable tension in the air. People looked at me with curiosity, concern, and, especially from those who'd always sided with Ava, a trace of panic. I wasn't supposed to leave like this. They expected me to be broken, licking my wounds, searching for a new job, regretting ever standing up for myself. But instead, I was walking out of here like a king, and they had no idea what was about to hit them. I took my time clearing out the last of my things from my desk, moving unhurriedly. Let them wonder. Let them whisper. Let them realize too late what they had done. Then, just as I expected, an email popped up on my screen. Subject: Final meeting, CEO's office. Ava, right on cue. I exhaled slowly and stood, adjusting my jacket as I made my way to her office. The walk felt different now. The same office, the same hallways, the same people, but everything had changed. Now, I was untouchable. I stepped inside without knocking. She was sitting behind her desk, but this time, the smug smile was gone. For the first time in years, I saw something I never thought I'd see on her face: doubt. She held my resignation letter in one hand, but what really caught my attention was the document in her other hand, the report I had included in my resignation letter. She had finally read it, and now she understood what she had lost. "Oh, Jade," she started, her voice controlled, careful. "Why didn't you tell us about this system before?" I let out a quiet chuckle, shaking my head slightly. "I did," I said 3 times. Her face went pale. I watched as she shuffled through the pages, her fingers trembling slightly. She knew exactly what she was looking at. It wasn't just that she had ignored something valuable. She was realizing that she had ignored something that could have saved Evermark. Her voice dropped, almost desperate. "You patented it." I nodded. 6 months ago. Silence stretched between us, the kind that made people truly understand just how badly they had messed up. Finally, she exhaled and straightened her shoulders, trying to regain some control. "Too late. Jade, let's be reasonable. We can match whatever offer you've got." I smiled. She was scrambling now. "It's not about money, Ava," I said. "It's about respect." Her jaw clenched. She hated hearing that. For years, she had assumed I would always be there, always giving to the company without asking for anything in return. She had treated me as replaceable, and now she was realizing how irreplaceable I actually was. "Jade, we can." "No," I cut in smoothly, my voice firm but calm. 3 years. 3 separate pitches. I sat in this very office, and you shot me down every single time. You said it wasn't feasible. You said we weren't ready for that level of change. I gestured toward the document in her hand. "Oh, now you're finally reading it because I'm leaving?" She didn't speak, but I could see it in her face: the regret, the realization, the panic. I stood, adjusting my jacket, and gave her one last look. "Enjoy your promotion," I said with a knowing smirk. "Sarah and Stuart are going to need all the luck they can get." With that, I walked out for the last time. That night, I sat in my new office at Westbridge, overlooking the city skyline, a view 10 times better than anything Evermark ever gave me. My name was already on the door. My system was already being integrated into the company structure. I had an entire team under me, people who respected my vision and understood my value. And the best part? I was just getting started. Then, my phone buzzed: a text from an old colleague, James. "Ava's in full meltdown mode. Stuart has no idea what he's doing. The board is furious." I leaned back in my chair, laughing quietly to myself. The cracks were already starting to show, and I hadn't even made my next move yet. 3 months had passed since I left Evermark, and the fallout was even worse than I'd predicted. It started as whispers, missed deadlines, unhappy clients, and minor errors that should have been easily preventable. Then those whispers grew louder. Projects collapsed. Clients walked away. Investors panicked. And at the center of it all, Stuart. The man Ava had chosen over me. The man who had smirked as I packed up my desk, thinking he'd won some great victory. The man who had no idea how deep and over his head he was. And now, he was drowning. I leaned back in my chair, scrolling through the latest industry news. Evermark Incorporated faces client exodus amid efficiency crisis. Stock down 30%. The headline alone was enough to make me smirk, but it was the article that really made it worth reading. I skimmed through it, my eyes catching on key phrases. Several longtime clients have cited severe project mismanagement since the departure of a key executive, leading to significant delays and operational inefficiencies. I knew exactly who that key executive was, and so did Ava. As I continued reading, a quote from one of Evermark's former clients caught my eye. It was a client I had personally managed during my time there. The quality of service at Evermark has deteriorated significantly. Projects that once ran like clockwork are now riddled with delays. It's like they lost the one thing holding them together. I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head slightly. They had lost me, and only now were they starting to understand what that meant. Across the room, my assistant Clara knocked gently before stepping in. "Your 3 o'clock with the Westbridge expansion team is in 10 minutes, she reminded me. "Thanks, Clara. I'll be ready," I said, closing my laptop. As she turned to leave, she paused. "Oh, one more thing," she added. "You got a voicemail from someone at Evermark. I think it was one of the board members. Should I forward it?" I smirked. "No need," I said. "I already know what they want." Evermark was unraveling, and now they were desperate. They thought I'd want to hear them out. They thought they still had leverage. They were wrong. Later that evening, I got a text from James, my former colleague. "James, dude, you need to hear this. Call me." Curious, I dialed his number. "Yo, James," I said when he picked up. "What's going on?" He let out a low whistle. "Man, you would not believe the disaster happening over here. Ava's losing it. And Stuart? He just resigned." I blinked. "Wait, what? Why?" "Couldn't handle the pressure," James said. "The board basically threw him under the bus, blamed him for everything. He walked out this morning, no 2 weeks notice, no goodbye. Just gone." I let out a short laugh. "So let me get this straight, Ava gave him the promotion that should have been mine, and now he's running for the hills?" "Pretty much," James replied. "And it gets worse, she's next. The board's had enough. Investors are threatening to pull funding unless there's a full leadership shakeup." I shook my head, amused. Incredible. She really thought she had it all figured out. "Yeah, well," James said, "she's figuring out now that she played herself. And the worst part? She still doesn't get why it all fell apart." Of course she didn't. Ava had spent years playing office politics instead of recognizing real talent. She rigged the game, handed out promotions based on favoritism instead of merit, and now it was all catching up to her. "So what now?" I asked. "The board's scrambling," James said. "They're looking for someone to come in and clean up the mess. And from what I hear, they want you." I rolled my eyes. Of course they do. After everything, after being overlooked, dismissed, and undervalued for years, now they needed me. But they were far too late. Westbridge had already given me everything Evermark never did, and I wasn't about to take a step backward. "I'm guessing Ava hasn't reached out yet?" I asked, though I already knew. "Not yet," James said. "But give it time, she will. And when she did, I'd be ready." The next morning, I was sitting in my office when my phone vibrated. A new email. I didn't even need to check the sender. I already knew who it was from. "Ava." I exhaled slowly, letting the moment settle before opening the message. "Jade, I think we may have made a mistake. I'd like to discuss an opportunity for you to return. Name your price." I smiled. Of course she wanted me back. But the problem was I wasn't for sale. I stared at the email for a long moment before typing my response. "Ava, I appreciate the offer, but I'm exactly where I need to be. Best of luck. Jade." Without another thought, I hit send. Just like that, the door to Evermark was officially closed forever. I leaned back in my chair, eyes on the city skyline, taking in the reality of my new life. Westbridge was thriving. My system was being deployed globally. I had full control of my work, a team that respected my vision, and a salary that made Evermark's look like pocket change. And Evermark? Evermark was bleeding out with no one to blame but themselves. The best part? I was just getting started. It didn't take long. 2 days after I sent my final email to Ava, the calls started. At first, I ignored them. Let each one go to voicemail, letting her desperation build. She wasn't used to being ignored, she was used to being in control. Used to being the one people chased, the one making decisions. But now she was the one doing the chasing. The phone rang again and again. Then another email appeared in my inbox. Subject: urgent, let's talk. I smirked as I clicked it open. "Jade, I know things ended on bad terms, but I really think we should talk. Evermark is willing to negotiate whatever you want. We can make it work. Just take a meeting. Please, please." I never thought I'd see Ava beg. I leaned back, staring at the message, letting it sit. I had two options. Ignore her completely, let her twist, let Evermark crumble until it was nothing but a cautionary tale. Or I could play the game. One last time. I drummed my fingers on my desk, weighing the possibilities. Then I made my decision. I picked up my phone, scrolled through the missed calls, and finally hit call. She answered immediately, like she'd been staring at her screen, waiting. "Jade," she breathed, tension thick in her voice. "Ava," I said, calm and smooth. There was a pause, a hesitation. She was used to having the upper hand, used to me fighting for her attention. But not anymore. "Thank you for calling me back," she finally said. "I know you're busy, but I really think we should talk." I gathered that from the 5 missed calls and your email, I replied dryly. Another pause. She hated this. She hated being the one who had to convince me. Jade, she said, her tone shifting to something carefully measured, an attempt at authority. I know Evermark hasn't been the same without you. Things have changed. That's one way to put it, I said, tilting my head. Stewart is gone, she continued, trying to sound composed, but I could hear the strain. The board is looking for new leadership. There's an opportunity here, she said. A big one. And I think it should be you. I almost laughed. 3 months ago, she'd looked me straight in the eye and told me I wasn't a team player, that I wasn't leadership material. And now she wanted me to come back and save her. Interesting, I said, drawing the word out deliberately. Jade, listen. I don't think I need to, I interrupted. In fact, I already know exactly what's going on. Evermark is crumbling. The board is panicking, and you're on the verge of losing everything. So now you come back to the guy you dismissed, hoping he'll fix it all. Silence. Long and heavy. When she finally spoke again, her voice was tight. It's not that simple. No, I said. I think it is. Another silence. Then a sharp exhale, frustration slipping through. Jade, she said, softer now, a crack in her composure. We made mistakes. I know that. But we need you. The company needs you. Just come in for a conversation. That's all I'm asking. I tapped my fingers on the desk, letting her plea hang in the air. She needed me to give her hope. Instead, I smiled. No. A sharp intake of breath. Jade, be reasonable. I am being reasonable, I said, voice steady. See, I gave Evermark everything I had. And you threw it away. You made your choice, now you live with it. I can fix this, she pressed. We can fix this. Ava, I said calmly. There is no we anymore. Silence again. Finally, a long sigh. Defeat bleeding through her words. You're really not going to help. No, I said simply. A beat. Then another. And she hung up. No goodbye. No last attempt to change my mind. Just silence. I stared at the phone for a moment before setting it down, shaking my head with a quiet smirk. Ava had always believed she was untouchable, convinced she was the smartest person in the room. Now, she finally knew what it felt like to lose. That night, I got a text from James. Ava looked like a ghost in today's meeting. It's over for her, man. Board's already talking replacements. I smiled. Of course they were. Ava had built her career on office politics, not actual competence. And now, with everything crumbling, there was no one left to shield her. Because when the dust settled, she wasn't as untouchable as she thought. And I had just proven it. The downfall came faster than I expected. Evermark had been teetering for months, but after that call with Ava, I knew the final blow was coming. And when it hit, it would be brutal. I arrived at Westbridge early the next morning, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, scrolling the latest headlines. There it was. The story that would send shockwaves through the corporate world. Evermark CEO Ava Dexter removed after leadership crisis. Board announces immediate restructuring. I let out a long breath and leaned back in my chair as I read the article. They'd done it. The board had finally cut her loose to save themselves. I skimmed through the article, my smirk widening with every line. After months of financial decline, client losses, and internal disarray, Evermark's board of directors has announced the immediate removal of CEO Ava Dexter. Sources close to the company revealed growing frustration among board members over Dexter's inability to steady operations following the exodus of key executives. Her tenure, the article continued, was defined by a controversial promotion that many believe triggered the company's downward spiral. I let out a quiet laugh. That so-called controversial promotion was Stewart, the very Stewart who bailed the moment the pressure mounted, leaving Ava to deal with the wreckage. Karma had never looked so poetic. As I reached the end of the article, a name popped out. Mine. Industry insiders speculate Evermark may attempt to bring back former executive Jade Curtis to lead its restructuring. Sources say Curtis is already thriving in his new role at Westbridge Industries. I rolled my eyes. Trying to recruit me again? Some lessons, it seemed, were never learned. Just then, my office phone rang. I didn't even have to check the caller ID, I already knew. Jade Curtis, I answered. Jade. The voice was calm, polished, but carefully measured. Mark Coleman, Evermark's chairman. The same man who once barely acknowledged me in boardrooms was now calling me directly. Mark, I said, settling back into my chair. What can I do for you? I'm sure you've seen the news, he began, keeping his tone neutral. I wanted to reach out personally about an opportunity. Let me guess, I said, cutting him off. Evermark wants me to come back and clean up the mess Ava left behind. A pause. We believe you're uniquely qualified to help restore the company's reputation, he said. I nearly laughed. They weren't even trying to be subtle. Let's be honest, Mark continued. You were the backbone of Evermark. Losing you was a mistake, we recognize that now. I raised an eyebrow. Funny, I replied. Because back when I actually worked there, no one seemed to recognize my value. But now that everything's in flames, suddenly, I was the foundation holding it all together? We're prepared to make it worth your while, he said, unfazed. Leadership position. Full autonomy. Double your previous salary. I let out a quiet chuckle. Mark, let me stop you right there, I said. I'll save you the trouble. My answer is no. Silence. I understand why you feel that way, he finally said. But Jade, this isn't just about us. Think about the employees still at Evermark, the ones who depended on you. Oh, the guilt card. Their last-ditch move. They wanted me to believe this was some noble opportunity, that I could be the savior swooping in to rescue the very people who stood by and said nothing. The employees still there? I echoed. You mean the ones who watched Ava promote Stewart over me? The same people who turned a blind eye when I was pushed out? Another long pause. Jade, Mark said carefully, we need someone who truly understands the company, someone who can fix what's broken. I smirked. You already had that person, Mark, I replied. You just didn't appreciate him until it was too late. Silence. He didn't argue, because he knew I was right. I appreciate the offer, I said after a beat, but I'm exactly where I need to be. And before he could say another word, I ended the call. That night, I was sitting in my apartment when a text came through from James. James, Ava called me today. She's not doing well. I stared at the message, then replied. Me, not my problem. His response came quickly. James, damn dude. No mercy. I exhaled slowly and typed back. Me. She had no mercy for me when she promoted Stewart. She made her bed, now she has to lie in it. There was a long pause before James finally replied. James, fair enough. I set my phone down and leaned back, eyes on the city lights outside. Ava had spent years believing she was untouchable, that she was the smartest person in the room, that she could manipulate people and always land on top. But now, she was gone, removed, discarded, forgotten, just like she had done to me. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a finger. The universe had done the work for me. A week after Evermark officially cut ties with Ava, I was in my office at Westbridge reviewing plans for the expansion of my system across multiple industries. Everything was moving faster than I'd ever imagined. Westbridge was thriving. Our efficiency metrics were shattering industry standards. Clients were lining up, and the media couldn't stop talking. Every major tech and business outlet was calling Westbridge the company that revolutionized workflow management, and at the center of it all was me. This was what I had envisioned all along. Not being a pawn in someone else's corporate game. Not waiting for approval from people who never saw my worth. But leading, deciding, owning every step. I was exactly where I was meant to be. Then my assistant, Clara, knocked gently on my door. Jade, I just got a call from Evermark's board. They're requesting a meeting. I didn't even glance up from my screen. Tell them I'm not interested. I did, Clara said, but they insisted. They said it's a proposal that deserves serious consideration. Now I looked up, narrowing my eyes. They weren't backing down. They were desperate. And if I was honest, I was curious. Fine, I said. Schedule it. Let's hear what they have to say. 2 days later, I walked into a private conference room at Evermark headquarters. I hadn't set foot in that building since the day I walked out. Now, I was returning on my own terms. Mark Coleman stood to greet me the moment I stepped inside. Jade, he said with a forced smile. Good to see you. I wish I could say the same, I replied smoothly, taking a seat across from him. He didn't flinch. He knew I wasn't there for small talk. Also seated at the table were 3 other board members, the same ones who barely acknowledged me during my time there. Now, they looked like they were ready to beg. Mark cleared his throat and slid a folder across the table. I'll get right to the point, he said. We want you to return to Evermark as our new CEO. I stared at him for a long moment, then I laughed. I actually laughed. Leaning back in my chair, I shook my head in disbelief. Let me get this straight, I said. You fired Ava, your golden girl, and now you want me, the guy she forced out, to clean up the mess she left behind? Mark didn't even flinch. Yes. I picked up the folder and flipped through it. The offer was staggering. Triple my old salary, full executive authority, a massive stock package. They weren't just inviting me back, they were begging. I closed the folder and set it aside, my expression unreadable. Why should I even consider this? I asked. Mark leaned in, lowering his voice. Because Evermark is still one of the biggest names in the industry. If you take the reins, you wouldn't just be fixing a company, you'd be shaping its future. Your future. I studied him carefully. He was smooth. He knew how to sell it. But I wasn't buying. Let me ask you something, Mark, I said. What happens if I say no? He didn't miss a beat. Then Evermark collapses. I tilted my head slightly. And that's my problem. Why? Silence. Mark sighed, rubbing his temples. Jade, I know we mishandled things before. I won't sugarcoat it. But this is bigger than past grudges. Evermark needs a real leader. And we're willing to make it worth your while. I sat in silence for a moment, tapping my fingers on the table, letting the weight of the moment hang in the air. They had once dismissed me like I was nothing. Now they were offering me everything. But I didn't want it. Because Evermark never deserved me. and now they were realizing it too late. I stood, adjusting my jacket. I appreciate the offer, I said, but I have to decline. Mark's expression tightened. Jade, Westbridge gave me everything, I cut in. Evermark never did. And I'm not about to trade that for a sinking ship. More silence. The board members exchanged looks. They knew they'd already lost me. I picked up the folder, opened it again, and tore the contract clean in half. I dropped the pieces on the table. Best of luck, I said smoothly. You're going to need it. And then I walked out again. Only this time, I wasn't leaving as an employee. I was leaving as the man who had won. That night, I sat in my office at Westbridge, sipping a glass of whiskey when my phone buzzed. A message from James. James, dude, just heard about the meeting. You really told them to go to hell? I smirked and took another sip before replying. Me, not in those exact words. But yeah, James responded immediately. James, damn. Ava must be losing her mind. I exhaled slowly, staring at my screen. Ava. I hadn't heard from her since the firing. And honestly, I didn't need to. Because I already knew what she was thinking. She thought picking Stuart over me secured her future. She thought I'd be nothing without Evermark. She thought I'd come crawling back. But now, she was stuck watching from the sidelines. While I thrived, she was irrelevant now, and I was just getting started. The day after I turned down Evermark's desperate offer, I walked into my office feeling lighter than I had in years. There was something profoundly satisfying about holding all the power, something Ava and her board never imagined was possible. For years, they had seen me as just another cog in the machine, easily replaced and ultimately forgettable. Now, they were watching from the sidelines as I thrived while their empire crumbled. Word of my rejection spread fast. By noon, I had 5 different emails from industry journalists asking for a comment. Westbridge's PR team even approached me. Should we issue a statement? Clara, my assistant, asked as she stepped into my office. I sipped my coffee, thinking it over. No, I said at last. Let them wonder. That was the most satisfying part, watching them scramble to make sense of it. Evermark hadn't just lost control, they'd lost the narrative. They assumed I'd leap at the chance to come back, that I was still the same man who once waited for their approval. They had no idea who I'd become. Now, I was untouchable. That evening, James called. Man, he said, I don't think you realize how bad it's gotten over here. Try me, I replied, leaning back in my chair. Ava's been calling everyone clients, partners, even former execs, trying to convince them to come back. But no one trusts her anymore. So now? I prompted. James sighed. Now they're all walking away. And with you at Westbridge, it's obvious who is really running the show. I smirked. So what's their next move? I asked. Oh, you're gonna love this, James said. The board's looking for a new CEO. Guess who they just contacted? I already knew the answer. Stuart, I said. Bingo, James confirmed. The same guy who helped bury them. They're so desperate, they're trying to bring him back. I let out a slow chuckle. They never learn, do they? Nope, James said. And that's why they're going down. He was right. Because Evermark's biggest failure wasn't just losing me, it was making it painfully clear to the world that they didn't know how to recognize real talent. And now, they were paying for it. That weekend, I attended one of the year's biggest tech and business conferences representing Westbridge. The event was packed. Investors, CEOs, rising stars from every corner of the industry. It was the perfect opportunity to solidify my standing. As I moved through the venue, shaking hands and exchanging cards, I could feel the shift. People weren't just acknowledging me, they were seeking me out. I mattered now. Then, near the networking lounge, I saw her. Ava. She stood near the bar, a drink in hand, wearing a strained smile as she spoke to a group of executives. But the moment her eyes met mine, the mask slipped. Her expression cracked. And for the first time, I saw something in Ava I never thought I would defeat. I walked past without stopping, barely giving her a glance. But I could feel her gaze following me. She was looking at me like someone seeing a ghost from their past, with disbelief, regret, and just a hint of fear. Because she knew. She knew I had won. And she had faded into irrelevance. Later that night, I was back in my hotel suite, sipping whiskey and catching up on emails when a new message appeared in my inbox from Ava Dexter. Subject, can we talk? I stared at the screen for a long moment, exhaling slowly. I could already imagine what the message said. Still, I clicked it open. Jade, I know things didn't end well between us, and I probably don't deserve a response. But I had to reach out. I've made mistakes, I see that now. I know I can't change the past, but I wanted to tell you I'm sorry. I should have valued you more. I should have listened. I'm not expecting anything. I just needed to say it. Ava, apologizing. That was something I never expected to see. I sat there for a few minutes, just staring at the screen, debating whether or not to respond. Then finally, I typed, Ava, I appreciate the message, but some mistakes can't be undone. Good luck. With that, I closed the laptop, took another sip of whiskey, and let the past stay in the past because the best revenge wasn't vengeance. It was never needing it. I had already won. The next morning, I sat in my Westbridge office, staring out at the city skyline. The sun poured through the glass, and the air had that rare, quiet confidence that only came with true clarity. Just 6 months ago, I was stuck in a company that undervalued me, working under someone who saw me as expendable, holding on to the hope of a promotion that was never coming. Now, I was leading an industry revolution. Westbridge had officially launched my project management system nationwide, and the numbers were staggering. Productivity was through the roof. Companies were saving millions in lost time. Investors were lining up, hungry to be a part of something game-changing. I had built something real, something that mattered. And best of all, I'd done it my way. Clara knocked on the door, stepping in with a folder. "Jade, I've got the final rollout numbers. Figured you'd want to see them." I took the folder and flipped it open. Client acquisition up 230%. Efficiency metrics at an all-time high. Industry adoption accelerating beyond projections. I smiled. "This is huge." Clara grinned. "Thought you'd like it." She paused. "Also, you got another email from Evermark. Mark Coleman again. Should I forward it?" I chuckled softly, shaking my head. "No need," I said. "I already know what it says." Evermark had lost everything: their clients, their credibility, their last shot at recovery. And now they wanted me to come back and bail them out. But I wasn't in the business of saving people who tried to bury me. Ava had learned that the hard way. Now it was Evermark's turn. That evening, I attended an exclusive business gala hosted by Westbridge. The room was filled with the most influential names in the industry, a celebration of our rise, of the waves we were making, of the future we were now shaping. As I moved through the venue, shaking hands with executives, investors, and rising innovators, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. For so long, I had fought for recognition, for respect, for a seat at the table. Now, I owned the table. I was sipping my whiskey, taking it all in, when a familiar voice broke through the noise. "Jade." I turned and there she was. Ava. She looked different. The confidence, the smugness, the power she once wore like armor, it was gone. She wasn't the queen of the corporate world anymore. She was just another guest at a party she no longer belonged to. "Didn't think I'd see you here," I said, casually swirling my drink. "Didn't think I'd have the courage to show up," she admitted, offering a small, tired smile. She hesitated, then let out a quiet breath. "Jade, I just wanted to say it again, I'm sorry." I studied her carefully, waiting for the angle, the manipulation, the power play. But there was none. Just a woman who had finally realized what she'd lost. And strangely, that felt more satisfying than any revenge ever could. "I know," I said simply. She nodded, accepting that as the closest thing to forgiveness she would get. Then, with one final glance around the room, she stepped back and walked away. And that was it. That was the end of our story. As the night wore on, I stood on the balcony overlooking the city below, the city that now represented my future. This was my moment. My victory. And the best part? I hadn't just survived Evermark. I had outgrown it. I pulled out my phone and opened a new email draft addressed to Westbridge's board. Subject: next big expansion. Because while Ava and Evermark faded into irrelevance, I was just getting started. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.